So Erin, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Erin Criger, and I'm a web writer for citynews.ca as well as 680news.com.
So Erin, talk about your day. What do you do day to day? What does the position of a web writer entail?
So my day starts at 5 a.m. and I come into a website that's been, the last update was probably around midnight. So my job is not only to freshen up or advance our existing stories, see what's changed. For example, last night when we left, there could be a garbage strike in Peel, and this morning when I came in, there was one. In fact, workers were on strike, so it involves updating that story and sending out that kind of information, not just through our website, but through our social media channels, as well as to people who have signed up through our email breaking news services. Another part of my day, finding news, is speaking with people who have been here. I rely quite heavily on our television teams. We work very well together to see kind of what our cameras have been doing all night. So I look at our website, I talk to our cameramen, I talk to our BT News producers, and there are two other sources I go to news, which are the print wires we subscribe to, sort of the Canadian Press, the Associated Press, as well as other written sources, and our video wires, so mostly CNN, some Reuters, to see what they're kind of covering for international video news.
In terms of sort of, what makes sort of a story a web-based story, can you sort of, go through that, and what would be a good radio story, what would be a good TV story? Just if you just focus on the web story, what makes a good web story?
Okay. I wish there was a simple answer, but what makes something a good web story is the same thing as it makes it a good news story kind of across the board. Does it affect people? Will people care? A garbage strike is one that does affect a lot of people. It's their tax dollars, it's their local governments, it's what they have to get through to drive down the street. You really want to look at who's going to be impacted, and that's true no matter how you decide what kind of story to cover it, and that's sort of platform agnostic. Good stories are platform agnostic. How you tell the story is what differentiates from a web, from radio, from television. Web stories, I personally think we have a little bit of an advantage because we can publish updates as we get them. We're not waiting for either a radio wheel to come around, so we don't do just updates on the ones, and we're not waiting for 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock to hit publish. That when news comes in, we can give it to you right away, and we can give it to you either on your phone or on your desktop, or even through our social media channels.
Does that create some challenges when you're sort of up all the time?
Absolutely. The pressure to be first versus the pressure to be right is a huge one. The goal is always to put out something you know to be true, and that means sometimes you're going to be behind maybe a competitor or behind maybe another source, because in this era too of fake news, you want to make sure that what you're putting out is true. You can't just find one tweet or one press release and say, oh, this must be true. You need to do a lot more reporting on that and find out from if what you're giving to your readers, if they can trust you, if they know what you're putting out is true.
Why is that trust important? You can talk about brand awareness, and like our brand is City News, and our brand is everything. It's all about credibility.
Yeah, I mean, the question it's just almost overwhelming. Trust is at the heart of news. If you're not being told the right things, it affects every aspect of your daily life, and it's something that's, if we tell you a road is closed but it's open, or it's open and it's closed, that affects your commute. I mean, and that's something not as, perhaps as, doesn't have the same kind of long-term effects, let's say, as misrepresenting a political candidate, or again pushing fake news, as we've seen a lot of over with Facebook in the past months leading up to the election. But every single aspect, I mean, we get excoriated for spelling mistakes because the trust readers have in us is so high. They come to City and they come to 680 because we are their local source for news, and it's a relationship we really treasure. We have to be right, or else we wouldn't be here.
Talk about the value of headlines when you're writing. How important are the headlines?
Everything and nothing. I would say it's very different from a newspaper, where you can kind of have something a little bit quippy or fun that doesn't tell you maybe anything, versus people want to know what they're clicking on right away. This is not usually a time for a lot of levity in our headlines. We might make a small pun here and there, but it's not. We want to get to the point. It helps when people are just sort of searching for something. If they heard there's a big fire on the Danforth, let's say, and they're putting that information into Google, we want to have the words fire and Danforth in our headline. Just it helps with, and that's called SEO optimization, or SEO, search engine optimization. We want people to be able to find what they're looking for, number one, if they're coming to us through a search engine, and we want people to know what they're clicking on if they're coming to us from another way, if they're just see a headline perhaps come across their own news feeds. Where we can have a little bit more fun and be a little bit more playful is on our social media channels, which is Twitter or Facebook. Because, however, we're not an entertainment or perhaps a little bit more of a lighthearted, we're not a shopping brand. Rogers has a lot of lifestyle publications and we're not one of them. We're news. It's a really delicate balance between trying to be engaging and trying to remain sensitive to the kind of stories that we cover. They're not necessarily going to be the 7 reasons you didn't know about a really serious story. That's not a professional maybe way of covering things.
And just when you're sort of traveling in your day-to-day things, what are some of the things you would look for to determine if, site you're on, perhaps some tips here for the students on sort of how to decipher between fake and real news? What are some of your sort of guidelines that you would go through or steps you would go through?
Have you heard of it? I would say is one thing. Does it have a second arm anywhere else? Who runs it? Do they have a mission statement? Do the authors have bylines? I think is a really big one. And can you find these authors somewhere else? Look at the quality of the design of the spelling. Are they spending money on copy editing? Are they spending money on making sure it's accessible on many different platforms? Is one. And the next thing I would say is look at the comments. Look at who's responding to it and use your best judgment there. If a website feels like an echo chamber, it probably is one. If you're getting a little bit of maybe some dissension in the comments, if you're getting a well-reasoned argument, let's say, that might be a bigger clue as well, that you're not just hearing people kind of say like right on or yes in the comment section as well.